Hi, and welcome back to the Raisins and Files podcast. This is your host, Jessica Cantor, and today I am very excited to welcome Jennifer Warren, who is joining me today. She is an former actress, producer, director, pedagogue. Is that the right word? Teacher. Recently, as of today, retired teacher and continuing to get her project off the ground. I am just thrilled to speak with you. Thank you for joining me, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can't forget in the intro that you're co-founder founder of the Alliance of Women's Director, which when I became a member of, was so excited to finally find a group that would have me. I was like, oh my gosh, I belong somewhere. Yay. So thank you for finding a place where I could belong. So
well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I wear that, I have that proudly, a badge that I proudly carry. So I'll start with my first question, because I think that opens up to an incredible world of discovery. What is your first movie memory?
I think it kind of embarrassing to say, but I think one of my first movie memories was seeing Francis the Talking Mule, which I thought was wonderful. And it was with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis and a talking mule.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I think about when you say that is Mr. Ed, which is not so different. I mean,
Right. And that's so different. It was a live mule that they made the mouth move to make it look like it was talking.
Yeah.
There were a series of those movies. There were 2 or 3 of them.
Wow.
Francis Talking Mule with so-and-so. I don't. Anyway, I thought at age 6 or 7 that they were wonderful. And my uncle, who was a famous Yiddish actor, Jacob Ben-Ami, every so often would take me to the movies. And he was, truly a great actor. John Barrymore said he was the greatest American actor.
Oh, wow.
And he would take me to the movies, and he said, "What movie you want to go to?" I said, "I want to see Francis the Talking Mule." And when we got out, I said, "Uncle Jacob, wasn't that wonderful?" And there was this very long silence. And I didn't know why he didn't just jump in there and say, "Yes, that was wonderful." And I knew it was later, thinking back, it must have been just so awful for him. But he was very gracious.
Yeah.
And,
well,
yeah.
Imagine if today you watched it and made him watch it over and over and over and over again. Like I've had to do this past weekend with my son who loves trains. And so I put on, what did I put on? It's I have a 2.5-year-old, so my memory is gone because I don't sleep.
Oh, wow.
Anymore. I put on oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on it. It has Tom Hanks as the voice. It's the big the Christmas movie.
Polar Express.
Thank you. And the proper Jewish mother puts on a Polar Express for her son, who is 2.5 years old, is singing Christmas carols. And we watched it 20 times in a row. I want it again, Mama. I was like,
"Oh, wow.
Sweetheart, we don't believe in Santa, but we can enjoy him." Please don't ruin that for any other children.
You love your son very much.
So at least your uncle didn't have to deal with that. Just a talking mule once.
Yeah, that would have been beyond.
Yeah. So, I hear a lot about famous Yiddish actors, but I don't know much about the history of that in our culture. actually, in America?
Well, I grew up in New York, and that's where it was centered.
Okay.
And he left Russia, at an early age, and became very well known in Poland in the very important theater world there. Then went to London and became very well known there, and then came to New York before I was born, and started the Yiddish Art Theater because he really wanted to keep the Yiddish language and the playwrights that wrote in Yiddish. He wanted to give them a place to try things and work. And he had this theater in New York for a long time, and then he would act and do Sholem Aleichem, and then Tyrone Guthrie cast him in when they did the Dybbuk on Broadway. He did the Dybbuk, and I remember seeing him do one of the Sholem Aleichem plays in New York when I was, I don't know, 7 or something, and he was playing God. So he had a long, white, flowing wig on, and he had a long, flowing white beard on, and he was sitting on a cloud. I made this, I remember. My mother took me, and I leaned over to her, and I said, "That man has Uncle Jacob's voice." And she said, "That is Uncle Jacob." I said, "No, that's not Uncle Jacob. But he does have Uncle Jacob's voice." And I remember seeing him up there, and he couldn't have been Uncle Jacob because there was nothing like Uncle Jacob about him except his voice.
Oh, wow. He really lost himself in that character, huh?
Oh, he was a wonderful actor. Yeah. He did Diary of Anne Frank on Broadway, and he had international tours. It was a big part of that world at that time.
I say this as a rumor because I have not seen any actual fact that my great-grandmother had a Yiddish radio channel show.
Oh.
She lived in Bushwick, New York at the time, and sang Yiddish and Yiddish. Played the piano and sang for a time, and it must, the time period wise, likely overlapped in New York. But and I keep trying to find, like, I'm like, they must have recorded it. Like, if it's true, I should be able to find it. But I haven't found it yet. She later opened a summer camp, but charmed the banker to give her the money.
Oh, nice.
But
did you try the Paley Museum of Television and Radio and Television?
Yeah, it was all in Yiddish. So I'm like, I'm trying to figure out. It's like a random radio channel in New York, so I'm trying to see if it was true or if it's just family legend, or maybe she was on it once. You know what I mean? Did she have a radio show, or was she a guest on one once? I don't know if it was a blown up legend or not, because but of the same time period, I find it fascinating. And so anyway, I was curious when you said that. So back to your cinema loving history, and we have your first movie. And clearly you were brought to the theater a lot, the live theater.
Yes.
How often, and what was it like to go see the movies while you were growing up?
Oh, I mean, I loved it. I mean, we didn't go a lot, but there was the Sheridan Square Playhouse movie house that was one of the old, palaces. And at least, maybe I'd say once a month we would go there. And it was special. And I later, when I was in high school, I remember going there, and they had Ingmar Bergman's films there, which were wonderful and special. And yeah, I mean, and my mother, when I was probably 12 or around those ages, we would go and see the Ealing English movies with Alec Guinness, the Lavender Hill Mob and all those wonderful comedies. And that was always a treat.
Did you find you liked comedy? Did you lean towards comedy or more drama?
We did see a lot of comedy, and it's funny, when I was acting in New York, in New York theater on and off Broadway, I only did comedy. And then when I came out here and started doing film, my first film was a drama, and all I did except once was drama in film and television. So I was half Jewish, but I looked like the perfect goy. So I would do all these, wonderful Jewish writers, Bruce J. Friedman, and wonderful Jewish comedy writers, Simon, and I looked like the perfect goy, but I really got all the Yiddish humor growing up with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And I mean, that's such a different range of performance. I mean, it makes sense that you would do what you did later, but going from comedy on stage to drama on screen is that's a very different temperature.
It is. It always frustrated me that I wasn't offered more comedy. I did do the Bob Newhart show with Bob Newhart. That was wonderful. It was one of the best scripts. CBS put it on as a scene from it on their 50th anniversary. I mean, it was wonderful. But that was veritably all, except the thing that was good is that as an actor, if you can bring comedy to drama and drama to comedy, you're making that material richer. And I was always able to do that.
And so when you decided you wanted to work in the business, did anyone else in your family work in the business besides your uncle?
Yes, my mother was an actress.
Okay.
And but she did she did television too, but she did many leads on Broadway before I was born, when in my early years, and then she kind of stopped.
Did your mom and your uncle encourage you, or did they want a different life for you?
No, I mean, they didn't say no, and from an early age, I was obviously interested. But it's a terrible life, and it's a terrible business, and nobody wants your child to go into it. I was so relieved when my son had no interest in going into it. His father, my husband, was a producer, a wonderful producer, and we were so worried that he would want to go into it, and fortunately he didn't. Yeah. And that was such a relief.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting balance, because I have this love of cinema. I'm a writer director, and I want my son to share my passion of cinema. Do I want him to work in cinema? I don't know. That's up to him, but he's 2.5, clearly a performer. If he gets a chance to stand on anything that resembles a stage, he will, but not he.
Well, as long as they love it.
Yeah. I'll,
I would prefer them not go into it.
yeah,
Because it's not a wonderful work life.
yeah.
It's filled with inconsistency, and you don't know when and if you're going to work again, all that, and it's a small insular industry, and
Yeah. I'm actually less worried about that part and more worried about public-private life today with social media. That is like,
yeah,
it was bad before, but now even as a kid, you're kind of, if you want to be in that world, you can be like, I'm like very cautious onto what, like, that's why I love showing him cinema and slow content and stories. And it's about imagination and play and less about watching an unboxing toy video. I don't want him to want to be an influencer. I want him to want to be a giraffe. Like, that's what I want.
Yes. Well, my son has two boys. I have two grandsons, and they're very careful with, they don't let them use the phone. They don't let them, and they just watch movies together, and that's a scary world out there.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. And it's part of like, when I'm looking at schools, especially elementary schools, I really hope I can find, at least through elementary school, that there's no phones, like that the peers in the class, that the parents, we can all agree as a group that we're not going to give our kids phones, maybe landlines, maybe watches, like safety things, but not social media, not phones. Because if we all do it together, then we can protect their innocence.
It's very hard, and my grandsons are 8 and 10 now, and they're just emerging into how do you protect them?
Yeah,
it's very hard and scary.
There was this beautiful poem that I saw on social media, of course, that came out from like a teenager about social media, about all the things they never will have, which is, I will never meet someone offline. I will never fall in love by accident. Like, I will never, all these things that social media is in the way of. Right? I will never go out with my friends without knowing where everyone else is. I will never I'll never experience a concert without someone's phone in my face. I'll never all of this whimsical stuff that we had as kids growing up, this freedom, and I started thinking about it and I was like, oh my gosh, I had that, even to just go to a movie and not have that pulse in your pocket.
Yes.
It just really free and turned off.
It's invasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been on my mind a lot. And part of the escapism of cinema. And I've been speaking to a lot of guests on the podcast about teenagers and what they're interested in for cinema. And they've been really interested in, that's why rom-coms are coming back, about learning to meet without technology. And older movies like Chinatown and more craft-based cinema, because it's this world before technology. So you're seeing 80s and 70s cinema coming back, which I think is really interesting. There's this nostalgia craving is just about a world where kids can go out and drive around and have this freedom that they don't get today. Because I think it's so interesting because as parents, even we have tabs on our kids in a way that nobody had tabs on us.
That's right.
And so in a way, we had to be safer because we were more free. It's scarier, so we couldn't act out as much, right? The ledge was deeper if we fell.
Yeah, that's right. And you didn't have, I remember when I was young, elementary school somewhere, maybe 9, 10 or something, going to a girlfriend's house, and she was in the village too, and I could walk there, and I got lost walking in the West Village, which I didn't know as well as the East Village, and I would have whipped out my phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was no phone.
Yeah.
And how did you, find this address when you were totally turned around? It was different.
Yeah, the risk you took. I mean, when I was 15, I flew to the south of France by myself to
Wow.
dance at this dance school. My mom said, I can take you or I can give you the money for the plane ticket so you could have spending money. And I took the money. So I was a month and I was in a school, and it was like mostly European kids and a few American kids. And my debit card wasn't working for whatever reason. And I had to figure out how to call my mom. And I didn't know how to make a collect call from Europe because it's like different. You couldn't just hit 0. So I was like trying to figure it out. And I had gone to like 10 ATMs being like, maybe this bank will work and that bank wouldn't work. So I was like, just like found an English speaking parent. And I was like, how do I make a collect? I don't have any cash, so I can't buy a calling card. How do I call my mom? I need her to figure out how to send me some money. And
Right.
And suddenly someone picks up the phone at the school payphone, and they're like, your mom's on the phone. And my mom's like, I got a call from the bank. Someone tried the ATM card 15 times. Like, are you okay? I'm like worried sick. And I'm like, card isn't working, Mom. It's like, imagine that today. I mean, that would never happen. She was like, she thought I was held up by gunpoint. And I was like, I was fine. Just trying to figure out how to take money out of the bank. And then the bank just, did what bank does. They shut off the card because they were like, it was international.
Oh, right, right.
But it was like one of those, like trying to figure out this puzzle. And, today that would have never happened. Like probably wouldn't have even let a kid go without some way of contacting.
Oh, right. And you call me when you get off the plane, and, you'd be in constant contact. I think there is a loss there. Yeah. That early independence you don't have. And a lot of parents are, they call them helicopter parents. They want to stay in touch all the time.
Yeah. And it's like, we have to grow up.
Right.
We have to get a life so our kids can get one. So I know it's so hard. So tell me a little bit about how you went from acting to directing.
Well, I'd always directed some,
Okay.
and my first husband was the director, and we would work together. We would direct plays, but we would direct together. And so I always, kind of had my hand in it. And then as I got older and was, less attractive for film, because, once you pass the age of 40 or 45, all of a sudden women aren't interesting anymore. Men, they get old and they're still interesting for some reason, but women aren't. So as I was approaching that age as an actor, I thought now's the time to get back into directing. And by then I had done so much film and television that I knew a lot about, camera and all that. So I really was excited to get into it in film, and loved it. I got one of the first things was the AFI's Women's Directing Workshop Program. And that was wonderful. I did, a short film under that program with Colleen Dewhurst and Melinda Dillon and these wonderful actors that I had worked with that I knew. Mm-hmm. And then I was hooked. Mm-hmm. And I started doing films and features. And
how old was your son when you started directing?
He was, well, he was about 10 11 when I switched from the principally acting to principally directing. And my first feature, he was 12, and he was always this kind of airplane maven. Mm-hmm. He loved airplanes. He loved to read airplane schedules. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was fascinated. And his teachers at school, at 11, 12, asked him to book their vacations. And he became a mini travel agent at the age of 11. And so he said, "Can I be the travel agent for your film?" And I thought he's capable of it. I mean, he really 12 and very in charge, So he was so excited that he would get a credit in the film as handling the travel for the film. And then he came up on a weekend, a couple weekends to watch, and he was, I think, 12 at that time.
Yeah. I ask mainly because I'm a single mom by choice. And when I had my kid, I still haven't made my first feature. And I just don't know how I'm going to like do it with a young child and be on set those hours and like handle childcare and be a parent. And I'm not like, I'm in my early 40s. I still have time. So I'm not like, I'm focusing on writing and finding the right thing and going to make some shorts and continue to work on my craft in the meantime. But I'm just like, I always ask this question of women who have done it and have had different ages of their kids. And, at 12, I think, they have their lives at that point, and it's a little easier because they have their activities and they're in school. And so taking the 2 months to go make your movie and come back isn't as...
Well, I mean, I had that same worry and question. And it really was because of my dear friend Rosalind Heller, who was a producer. When Barney was... No, I hadn't had him yet. I did a film with Roz that she produced called Ice Castles. Mm-hmm. And I was in it, and she brought her 2-year-old daughter on set. I mean, she was producing it, and we were always on location. And I watched her, and I talked to her about it, and I said, I mean, I'm thinking about having a child, but how do you do it if you're on location for a month, 2 months, And here she was, and she brought her nanny with her, and, and then they would have, where she was staying, and she would come and go. And at night they would be together. And if I hadn't seen Roz do it, I don't know how I would have had the courage. And about, I don't know, 2 years later or something, I had my son, and I went back to work as an actor when he was 6 months, mm-hmm. and he came with me, mm-hmm. and he came with me for all those early years.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody to, stay with them, it's doable.
Yeah, especially if I focus on summers, like write things.
I mean,
for summertime, just make sure I'm always writing for my summer, so that he, even if he's a little older and in school, I can plan cool summer trips for him and put him in summer camp wherever we are, and
Yeah, but it is doable, and it was a big obstacle for me too, because I thought, how do you do it?
It's like it's not even. Yeah, it's just this there's a lot to juggle, and
it is a lot to juggle anyway.
Yeah.
But still, it's doable. And he got to be an early flyer. He knew the airlines, and he loved the stewardesses. Mm-hmm.
I know my son loves trains, but he now we travel a bit, and he likes airplanes too. He's a pretty good traveler. So the traveling part, I'm not so worried about. It's more just the long days, and not I was a very, I made a choice to be a parent. I want to be his parent. I don't want him to be raised by nannies, and it's hard if you want to be a working parent to find that balance.
I mean, if you can find someone to go with you, then it's doable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do it otherwise, but, and then you're with them at the evenings, usually it's the evenings, and you're tired and you really just, want to hit the sack, but, you have that time. You're not away from them. You're not separated, And he went on location with me from, 6 months to 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And then I, wanted to be. And so I wouldn't take every film. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't, which probably was dumb career-wise, but it was a choice.
Yeah.
And it was a choice that I wanted to have, my family life, my husband and my son. And he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And it turned out well. He's my best production.
Yeah. And I mean, did you focus mostly on film or television too?
Well, the first, I would say 5 years, that was a time where if you were doing features and then did television, that was a no-no.
Okay. And
then it kind of loosened up that you could do both and not, be looked down on. So then I did both, and that was a time when they were doing a lot of good films for television, which is now that's in cable, but there are a lot of, some of the best films now are on cable because they have more freedom in subject matter, and and the writers prefer to work there because they have more freedom. Yeah,
it's interesting. I I have a friend. I worked on a TV show as an assistant, and my showrunner was the assistant to the showrunner. I was like, I wanted to start directing a couple years later in television. Can I shadow on one of your shows? And he was like, the best thing you do is get yourself an independent feature made, and then it's much easier to get yourself on a TV show. And so I've been working on that goal for a while. I was like, I don't know if that's the right advice.
I mean, now doing an independent feature is not necessarily an entryway into television. Television is such a different animal in skill set and worlds that it used to be, I think, more of a entry level way to get into television. Now you have to start with television and to get into television. Yeah. And it's really hard. It's very close.
Yeah. It's an interesting kind of back and forth. I really focused my energy on the independent film world because writing wise, that's really where I'm finding my voice and I'm finding freedom. And I think once I really get that mark, it just, feels like then I'll find my people in television if I want to go in that direction. And I also, everything studio is contracting. So I'm feeling some really interesting energy in the independent space right now. So I'm following that energy.
But it's hard. I mean, getting independent features financed is harder now than it was earlier.
It's, I think,
because there are not as many.
I think
much of that the world is now in cable.
Yeah.
And that's why with the Alliance of Women Directors, we're trying very hard and we're succeeding slowly of getting the different studios and networks to not just have shadowing programs, but that it ends up that you get a episode to direct, so you get a credit. You have to have a credit to get more credits. And we have a program with Stars that now they've taken 3 of our directors from the Alliance, and they're getting good shows to direct and we're working with another studio to start another program like that.
That's great.
Because it's hard.
It's hard. It's really hard to get that foot in the door. I'm starting to I hit a wall for a while with independent, and then just in the last year, since the studios were contracting, somehow the streamers let go of global rights and pre-sales are back. And so financing is coming back. And that old finance model is finally back again. And I'm seeing movies like the $1 to $5 million movie rangers starting to come back again.
Well, that's wonderful. How long it'll last, nobody knows.
Grabbing onto it while it's here. That's the goal.
Yes.
And kind of cultivating a new group of independent financiers and trying to build that creative community of and building a new audience. It's not just the financiers, but looking at Gen Z and saying they want craft, they want nostalgia. How do we build that audience and that demand for that kind of movie, that kind of storytelling? Nice. So it's kind of both sides.
Well, I hope that catches on.
I hope so too.
Yeah, it's important.
I know. And I feel.
And this is a real time of transition.
It really is. It's really interesting, and I love technology, and I really want to see how we can use it to help us as creatives rather than replace us. I actually think if we use the technology well to help us, it can empower our creativity and reduce that excess cost that was making things more expensive than it needed to be. The bloat of things. So, and that I think that's the contraction we're feeling from the studios and the networks, is that bloat.
And if you know how to use the new media of all the new AI and all that, you can. I mean, it's early, but they're beginning to find ways that it makes shooting on film more open as to subject matter, what you can cover in a studio, and it seemed like you're on location because of the use of AI, and it's not as expensive as going on location.
AI isn't great at writing scripts, but it could be really great at breaking them down and helping you pick out all the props and the scenes and characters and day of days. Like, it could do all of that work and allow the AD to focus on more like the actual making sure all the production budget is on screen rather than having their pencils and schedules the whole time, and so I think that part of AI is going to help us be more efficient. It's going to save us a lot of money in prep. It's going to allow us to focus on really fun things. Like, imagine if it flagged all the ways guns are used, all the ways cigarettes are used, seatbelts, all the health and safety. Like, it could just say, hey, Apple isn't going to screen your movie because you have these cigarettes in these scenes. Do you want to change it? You know what I mean? Like, you'll lost a distributor if you don't do that, and so
you have more flexibility.
Yeah, and it'll just understand what all the data parameters of what you're writing, and it doesn't dictate the feeling or the story, but it can help it meet its audience in a more efficient way.
Well, ideally, that's the way it'll go.
Yeah.
But everything is so up in the air at the moment. It's hard to know how positively it'll be used and how negatively it'll be used.
Exactly.
It's a real time of transition.
Yeah. So tell me more about going into teaching and deciding to stop teaching.
Well, I must say it's been wonderful. I was producing and directing, and it was really hard to break into television, and I wanted to work more than I was able to, because especially at that point, which was, a while ago, women were not first on anybody's list to be director, producer, or anything. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, it stymied me. Mm-hmm. And I was asked to do this class, at UCLA, and what would you do if you could do anything? So I said, well, I do a class in which I helped the women graduating transition into the entertainment world and get a job, and I have an idea of how to do that. And I did a class at UCLA in which I brought in 3 women in different positions, different jobs in the industry every week. So one would be entertainment law, one would be designer, or one would be director, one would be writer, one would be ADs, one would be sound, So I would get 3 women just to come in to talk to these graduating women about, there are not 5 jobs in film that, you writer, producer, director, cinematographer, and sound person. No, there are 65 jobs in film. And what are those that you could start in and work your way up in? So I had the women in this class have to cold call somebody, 3 women in a job, an entry-level job. So it could be sound, it could be assistant camera, it could be, whatever they were interested in before they got to be director. And a handful of them got jobs from these projects that I made them do of cold calling. Mm-hmm. 3 of them went to Skywalker Sound right out of class, right when they graduated. And then when they graduated, they stayed together as a support group.
I love that.
And that's what, I took it to AFI because I finished the program there, and I realized they had no real program attached to the Women's Directing Workshop program. It was $1,500 and a hearty. Uh-huh. There were no seminars, no anything. Mm-hmm. So I went to the head of the program, who I knew, and I said, listen, I just did this program at UCLA, and it was really successful for the women, and I would do this free for the program because there is no program. The women need a program. They come from all different walks of life, and some are editors, they don't know the rest, and some are, producers, they don't know editing. So they need help. And she said to me, oh, we tried that and it didn't work. And I knew she was lying because I knew they hadn't tried it. And it made me so mad that I went down to USC and I said, I have this program that helps the women graduating from your program, undergraduate and graduate. And it helps them make that jump into entry-level jobs. And Mark Harris, who is a brilliant documentary director, he's won 2 or 3 Academy Awards. He said, that's exactly what we need, you're hired. And I started there doing that program because I knew how hard it was, especially, for anybody, but especially for women, especially for women of color, to break in. And it helped, it worked.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people don't know they just have to call. and ask.
They have to call, however uncomfortable and scary and all that it is. You do.
I mean, that's
and
how I got my first job. I mean, I wasn't in a program, but I was like an overconfident little brat. And so I was at NYU. I was in Gallatin at NYU, and I had the freedom to do internships every semester and get credit. And so I interned at Focus, at Miramax. So by the time I graduated, I had been on like every major desk, and as an intern, and already knew how offices ran and worked. Yeah. And then I still had trouble getting a job, and they had a temp agency called Force One Entertainment in New York. And they were the temp agency for all of those companies. And the guy, Jeff, was like, you can call me as much as you want. And if there's a desk open, for an assistant that's out sick or whatever, you can, if you're the one who calls, you'll get the job. And every morning at 9 a.m., the first thing I did, I would brush my teeth and call Jeff. And I called him every day. And then I ended up at Sony, and I ended up at my first job for a year, helping open the development office at Sony Pictures.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's how I got my first job. I called every single day. And one day I was like, Jeff, am I annoying you? And he was like, nope, this is what you do. This is how you get a job. Call me every day. And so I was like, hey, Jessica, just let you know I'm available to work today. And that was it. And I'd hang up the phone the next day. Hi, it's Jessica. Just calling again, let you know I'm available to work today. Like every single day.
Good for you.
That's how I got.
Good for
and
you.
It was like,
I mean, you're so scared about being too pushy, or people don't want that, but you do have to do that.
But yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a junior, I think it was, trying to think of the dorm I was in. No, sophomore. I saw the trailer for Almost Famous, and I just really wanted to see that movie, the music, the era, the music, whatever. And I found Cameron Crowe's productions office email address, and I emailed. I think I'd just seen the movie, and I told them all the reasons why I liked the movie and how it moved me and parts of the story, and that I'm studying film, and I just found it so interesting. And the assistant wrote me back and invited me to intern that summer.
Wonderful.
But they were like, you have to come to LA. And I was like, Mom, can I go to LA? She's like, nope. I'm not paying for you to go to LA. Find an internship in New York. I was like, okay. But I mean, that was like, but that was like, that's my advice to young people, is just like, show people kindness and admiration, and
and do your homework on the favorite people whose work that you're watching, that you said, that's the kind of work I want to do.
Exactly.
And then you call them and say, I love that you did that. That's exactly what I tell my students.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
That. And then the other advice that I got because I was a ballet dancer in high school, and there is this, which I think is similar for female actresses or actors, this time gun. I mean, women have it in general because we have a biological clock. So we have this time thing that is ingrained in us, that we expire, that our life expires. As a ballet dancer, we expire pretty fast. And so for a moment when I left, I got injured and I went to college, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And I knew I loved cinema. So at first I was a performer from dance. I thought maybe I would act, which wasn't for me. And I wanted to tell stories in a different way, I discovered. But I was in a rush. I was in this huge rush because I was and I went to high school with a lot of child actors. And so I just thought if I didn't make it right away, I was never going to make it. If I just didn't find success young. And, there's a startup culture, and you see all these young millionaires, and there's this rush to be successful in your 20s for some reason. And this talent manager named Davian Littlefield said to me, it is really lonely at the top. The most important thing you need to do is find your creative community. The people who you can just trust to tell you when something you write sucks, and how to help you make it better, and who to just experiment with and grow with and challenge each other through your entire career. And that is the most important thing that you could focus on. So if you ever feel lost, at any point in your life or your career, just take a pause and look for a new creative community, reconnect with your old creative community. And that is whenever I feel like, just even doing the podcast for me is about that, is like, I need, coming out of postpartum, there's a new part of me that exists now, and I need to discover my mom version of my creative community. And so here I am. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure that out. And so that was some of my most important advice that I took to heart.
Totally. You're absolutely right. I'm glad you're spreading the word, because, I mean, that's what we try to do at the Alliance of Women Directors, is create that community that you can find people that have children or are trying to make it work anyway. And, you know, whatever your need is or whatever your niche is, that you can find somebody who you can talk to about it. They will support you. They will help you. There's a program, to help in that area. You need to build your community. I think that's one of the most important things about film school, is that it creates communities, and you come out with your own little tribe that you can make films with, and you can count on for support and help and information and sharing.
Yeah. And
you need it. And how do you find it? And, through film school, you find it, and through organizations like the Alliance, you find it.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
It's hard. I think also it's finding people who share your taste.
Yes, indeed. And that's why when you graduated film school, you found that little group that you have the same taste.
It's like,
you have the same interests.
Yeah. And so that it brings me to a question about your son, because this is a question I like to ask, is as you're introducing your child to cinema, how did you discover his taste? Well,
we were talking about this not so long ago, and he said, you would take me to a lot of different movies. And I think when he was really young, it was more the animated films. He remembers early on Lady and the Tramp. And we always had dogs, so, it was, one of my favorites too, because they were dogs, and yet I knew that he wasn't like one of those young children that got fascinated with film. It wasn't that. He just enjoyed it. And I was so glad that he didn't have the fascination that might lead him to wanting to only work in it. But he would try different kinds of film, and he would go with us, to try different films. And it really wasn't until he was like in middle school and early high school that he found his own taste. And I remember he and his buddies standing for hours and hours when the Star Wars films were re-released, and that was the first time I saw him really, glom on to something, and they were standing in line for 7 hours or something.
Yeah, it was like his thing.
And it was an adventure, and they loved the film.
That's great. And then your grandchildren, do you see them having their own taste? Are you finding their emerging personalities?
And I also see them moving in different years to different tastes, and they have this, love of those, what was it? Something Paws. It was a
Paw Patrol?
Animated. Yes, Paw Patrol. When they were that age, and everything was Paw Patrol, and they knew everything about Paw Patrol. And then they grew out of it, and they moved on to other things. So by the time they get to be, middle school or something, they will have gone through all these different periods and, investigating different kinds of films.
Yeah.
And they will have a broad background, and then they'll hone in on what it is that they like.
Yeah.
And now everything is sports,
Yeah.
and they want the sports films, and
Are you picking anything out for them that's like, oh, can I show you something that you might like? Will you give it a try? Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, well, they're in New York, so when they come out here, I always have a couple films that say, have you seen this? And it was great when I used to get the Academy that would send me, the screeners before the Academy Awards, and you get, all the films for that year. And so then I'd go through them, and I'd put aside a pile from that year that then I'd say to them, have you seen this one? This is great.
Yeah.
And they would try it. Sometimes it'd be too scary, or,
it's going to get,
they didn't like scary too much.
It's going to get more and more fun. I think my son's going to like scary. He just the easy things scare him a little bit. I mean, he's 2.5, but he wants to be scared again. He'll get scared, and then I'm like, do you want me to turn it off? No. Hands up, looking through his fingers, so I think he's into it, which we have a little bit of a horror culture in my family, so I'm like, come on, we could do it.
Yes, well, we do not have a horror culture in our family, and he didn't like horror films, and I'm not particularly into that either, so that was like, no, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, we're trains right now. We're really into trains. But I also I was shocked. I didn't think my son would get it. I mean, so young, but he loves WALL-E.
Oh,
and he
well, that was a wonderful film.
Beautiful, and he really was mesmerized by it and watched it. And then when I thought about it, I was like, well, WALL-E really is just a futuristic garbage man. And so it kind of fits into his whole world anyway. So yeah, he really,
these more important themes underneath it. And that sticks with you.
Yeah, he really,
and all that is wonderful.
He's really into watching how things work. Really the detail of things. And so that's more the kind of, and he likes watching how kids interact. I think that's why he likes Polar Express, because of the social dynamics between the kids on the train. So he's going through his big feelings phase right now. So he's learning how to deal with that. And,
well, I think all that's a help.
It's really interesting to watch what he really focuses in on, and then of course the 5th time he watched it, he starts singing the Christmas song. I'm like, okay, should we change movies? But it's okay, part of being American.
We celebrate both. Yes.
I mean, it's hard not to if you live in America.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. So I'm like, I give into it, but I'm just like, I wish there was some thing to balance it out, because I'll be a little confused. As long as he doesn't ruin it for other kids. All right. I know we're running up against the hour, and I really want to respect your time. So I'm going to ask you my last question, which is, if you could recommend one movie for my son, which he could watch at any point in his life, not today, for him to fall in love with cinema, what would the movie be?
Well, one idea, first of all, the silent films, Chaplin, and The Artist. They're showing that, I think, next week on PBS. You remember The Artist? That was this modern silent film. But I think missing the old silent films is a loss. And to go, because it's physical comedy. that young ones really get and like. And there's some really great performers and great artists back then. And that's not an area they would go to of their own volition, I think.
Yeah.
But once they see it, and the Marx Brothers and, I mean, it's a different world that you can kind of grow up into.
Yeah.
But to watch like Buster Keaton and the early
like Laurel and Hardy
films,
yeah,
to watch that physical comedy in which it's just human behavior, it's an area that he might skip over and without your guide.
I did and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, which I like to say because if someone's listening for multiple times, they might get annoyed. For his birthday party this year, when he turned 2 in December, I got a print of The Red Balloon and rented a movie theater for him and his friends. And it was the first time he was ever...
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was the first time most of them had ever been inside of a movie theater. And it's, 30-minute film. So it was the right length. And they didn't have... it was like a DVD or a print, and they didn't have a DCP. So I had to get a specific theater. And then when they offered me the print, I took it. I was like, how much is it? At $200? Yes. I'll drive to the Valley and pick up the print. So he gets to see his first movie in a theater on actual print. That's what I'm going to do. And it was
excellent.
Thank you. It was so magical. Yeah. And so I'm like, all the parents were like, that was an amazing experience, because they could walk around, but when the movie started, they just all were mesmerized. And,
oh, that's great.
And so I was thinking, actually, I'm like, what movie do I do next year? Because I think when he's 4, I'm going to do E.T., but I need a movie for when he's 3, and I like Modern Times, maybe a really good one.
Yes.
But if it's short enough, it might be too long. I have to find the right one. And it would be really fun to do one and get my brother as a cellist and see if I can get a quartet to play live. I think that could be really cool. A slightly different experience for them,
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. And Modern Times with all the mechanism, of how things work. Maybe you don't show the whole film. Yeah. Maybe you show half of it or something.
Yeah, or I could have some gears and stuff for them to play with at the front of the theater while they're watching.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. But if I have the music and the theater, maybe that would work too. So I don't know. It could be cool. I have to think about it. But that one I feel like would match my son. I almost did that this time, but I was like, that's too long for them now, but could be ready for it. It could be ready by then.
Right. Or they can pay attention when they're interested and then wander off and do something else and then come back. They could just go in the background as well.
Yeah, there's no rules when you rent the theater.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. This is I have so many more questions to ask you, and we didn't even get to your retiring from teaching and your projects that you're about to do. So
yeah, that's exciting.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. So thank you. This was lovely. Yeah.
And I can't wait to see more. I'll keep my eyes out for any announcements and be sure to amplify them out.
Excellent. I'll let you know.
Thank you. If you enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes release every Wednesday. And leave a comment and let me know which movie you think I should show my son. Until next time, take care.